why millions are fleeing these 10 European countries in 2025. Across Europe, a silent exodus is underway. Why are millions abandoning countries they once called home? The answers are more complex and more urgent than you think. In 2025, Europe faces an unprecedented emigration crisis. Millions are leaving their homelands in search of economic opportunity, personal safety, and political stability. Countries long considered beacons of prosperity and cultural heritage now grapple with challenges that push their citizens to seek better lives elsewhere. From the UK's soaring living costs to Greece's lingering economic struggles, this documentary investigates why these 10 European nations are seeing record levels of outward migration. We break down the economic, social, and political factors driving this exodus and explore what these trends mean for Europe's future. United Kingdom, rising costs and post-Brexit struggles. The United Kingdom is experiencing one of the most significant population outflows in its modern history. In 2022, nearly 493,000 people emigrated, and this trend has only increased into 2025. The main driver is the soaring cost of living. London rents now average €2,500 per month, consuming more than half of most household incomes. Food and energy prices have also spiked, with energy bills rising by 30% since 2020. Post-Brexit consequences are still hitting the economy hard. The British Chambers of Commerce reports that 20% of businesses have relocated to the EU since 2016. This has reduced domestic job opportunities and weakened local industries. The National Health Service faces a severe staffing crisis, with a shortage of 50,000 nurses, according to the British Medical Association. Violent incidents increased by 7% in 2024 per the Home Office, adding to a sense of public insecurity. The OECD notes that 40% of immigrants from the UK are graduates, revealing a significant brain drain that may hurt the economy further in the long run. Germany, economic pressures and social tensions. Germany, Europe's industrial powerhouse, saw more than 100,000 people leave in 2024. A big factor is taxation. For top earners, rates hover around 40%. Berlin's housing costs have surged 40% since 2020, making both ownership and long-term renting unaffordable for many middle-class families. The nation's aging population is another serious concern. Eurostat reports that 20% of Germany's population is now over 65, increasing pressure on pensions and healthcare. The IMF expects a 15% drop in Germany's working population by 2030, which would threaten economic output. Public frustration is growing. Mass protests over immigration policy and economic inequality brought 50,000 people into the streets of Berlin. Since 2022, 10% of Germany's manufacturing firms have shifted operations to Asia, according to the German Economic Institute. These issues paint the picture of a country that, while still influential, is struggling to retain its skilled workforce and younger generation. France, soaring costs and political unrest. France's emigration rate reached 80,000 in 2024, per INSEE. The cost of living is rising sharply, especially in Paris. A one-bedroom apartment now averages €1,500, and prices for everyday essentials have gone up 25% since 2020, according to Eurostat. Political turmoil is another key factor. Massive
massive protests over pension reforms in 2023 brought over 1 million people onto the streets, as reported by Le Monde. This kind of unrest discourages investment and creates deep uncertainty about the country's direction. Crime is rising too. Gang-related violence in cities like Paris and Marseille grew by 10% in 2024, according to the French Interior Ministry. On top of that, France's national debt has ballooned to 3 trillion euros per Banque de France. Business taxes can reach up to 45%, hurting entrepreneurship. The OECD estimates that 20% of young professionals emigrated from France in 2024 alone, highlighting a troubling trend for the country's future.
Italy, aging society and economic decline. Italy's emigration totaled 70,000 in 2024, according to ISTAT. The economy continues to stagnate, and the population is rapidly aging. Youth unemployment is at 22%, one of the highest in Europe, per Eurostat. Rents have climbed 30% since 2020, while average wages have remained almost flat. This mismatch leaves young Italians with few opportunities. The 2008 financial crisis still casts a long shadow. More than 40% of small businesses have shut down since then, according to Confcommercio. Infrastructure is an issue. 10 bridge collapses since 2010 reflect years of underinvestment, per the Italian Transport Ministry. Nearly 23% of the population is now over 65, according to the UN, shrinking the labor force and raising the tax burden on younger citizens.
Spain, high unemployment and housing crisis. Spain saw 60,000 citizens emigrate in 2024, according to INE. Youth unemployment remains a top concern at 28% per Eurostat. Many young adults struggle to find full-time work or must rely on temporary contracts, which affect 30% of them. Housing is another issue. In Barcelona, rents have surged by 50% in recent years, partly due to the popularity of short-term rentals like Airbnb, pushing locals out of their neighborhoods. Political instability also plays a role. In 2024, 500,000 people participated in protests in Catalonia, as reported by El País. The broader unemployment rate is 12%, still above the EU average. These combined pressures are prompting more Spaniards, especially the youth, to look abroad for stability.
Netherlands, regulatory burdens and rising crime. The Netherlands lost 40,000 residents in 2024, per Statistics Netherlands. Housing prices are among Europe's highest, with the average home costing 400,000 euros. Entrepreneurship is being held back by high taxes and strict regulations. Many businesses face a 35% tax rate. The Dutch Chamber of Commerce says that since 2022, 20% of startups have moved to more favorable countries. Crime, especially drug-related incidents, has increased. In Amsterdam, police reported a 15% rise in drug trafficking in 2024. The Dutch system, once admired for balance and opportunity, is now facing criticism for being too rigid and increasingly unsafe.
Sweden, crime surge and healthcare struggles.
Sweden experienced 30,000 emigrations in 2024, per Statistics Sweden. Gun violence has risen by 15%, according to the Swedish Crime Agency, changing the country's image as a safe place. Housing is also a huge issue. Apartment prices now average 500,000 euros, and in major cities, rental waiting lists stretch as long as 20 years. Per Boverket, Sweden's healthcare system is under pressure. Waiting times for vital procedures can exceed 6 months, even though taxes are as high as 45%, per Skatteverket. These factors – crime, housing stress, and long medical wait times – are making many Swedes consider life abroad.
Poland, low wages and political divide. Poland saw 50,000 people leave in 2024, adding to the 2 million who have emigrated since 2004, according to GUS. The cost of living is climbing. In Warsaw, rents have surged by 80% since 2020, per Eurostat. Wage growth has not kept pace, leading to growing dissatisfaction. The political climate is tense. In 2024, 100,000 citizens joined protests, per Gazeta Wyborcza, with a birth rate of just 1.3 children per woman, per Eurostat. The UN expects Poland's population to drop by 10% by 2050. Low wages, high rents, and deep political divides are convincing many to leave.
Portugal. Tourism boom, local struggles. Portugal lost 15,000 residents in 2024, per INE, even as tourism flourishes. In Lisbon, rents have doubled since 2020, according to Eurostat, pricing many locals out of the market. Youth unemployment stands at 15%. The OECD reports that 20% of graduates now work abroad. Despite booming tourism, Portugal's GDP per capita is 22,000 euros, far below the EU average of 35,000 euros per IMF. Locals often feel the benefits of tourism do not reach them. With limited job growth and rising costs, many are seeking better futures abroad.
Greece, economic and environmental challenges. Greece saw 50,000 people emigrate in 2024, per Elstat. Youth unemployment is at 30%, one of the highest in the EU, per Eurostat. Wages remain low and job security is weak. The 2008 financial crisis continues to haunt the country. GDP fell by 30%, according to the IMF, and around 500,000 people have emigrated since, per the European Commission. Adding to the economic problems are environmental ones. Wildfires damaged 10% of rural areas in 2024, per the UN Environment Program, creating new hardships for rural families.
Europe's immigration crisis. These 10 countries, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, Sweden, Poland, Portugal, and Greece, face connected challenges: rising costs, stagnant wages, aging populations, political unrest, and even environmental disasters. The United Nations projects a 6% population decline across Europe by 2100. The European Commission warns that 30% of skilled workers left these countries in 2024 alone, raising serious questions about Europe's future. What will it take to reverse this trend? Subscribe now to discover more stories that shape our world.